The clock struck 2:03 a.m. when the silence shattered. A single boot exploded against the apartment door, sending shards of wood skittering across the polished floor. The frame groaned, splintered, and finally gave way with a scream of metal hinges. In stormed two officers, uniforms dark, flashlights blazing, boots pounding in rhythm with their heavy breaths. The first officer, Detective Cole Raniere, moved like a blade, cutting through the room with sharp, decisive motions. His flashlight beam swept across furniture, scattering shadows like prey. Behind him, Sergeant Marcus Hale advanced slower, steadier, one hand hovering near his holstered weapon, eyes narrowing at every movement. Their presence was suffocating, the apartment shrinking with every step they took. Drawers yanked open, frames knocked from walls, papers fluttered down like withered leaves caught in a storm. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound that dared to linger between their voices. "Clear the room!" Raniere barked, his tone sharp enough to slice the silence. Hale moved in sync, sweeping corners, shoving aside chairs, overturning cushions as if the walls themselves hid secrets. Then the beams of their flashlights collided on the bedroom doorway. Inside, Evelyn Cross bolted upright. The sudden flood of light blinded her, forcing her to throw up a hand as shadows fractured across her face. Her tank top clung to her in the heat of the night, her bare legs tangled in sheets she hadn't had the chance to kick free. The room that had been hers only seconds before was now an interrogation chamber. "Hands where we can see them!" Raniere's command cracked through the air. For a breathless moment, Evelyn didn't move. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but her expression didn't betray fear. Instead, she moved slowly, deliberately, raising her hands until they hovered at shoulder height. Her eyes, steady and unblinking, locked onto the two men. The officers fanned out, beams of light crawling across every corner of the room. The dresser drawers gaped open, their contents spilling across the floor like spilled entrails. A lamp lay shattered, its bulb still glowing faintly against the hardwood. The cracked glass door behind her rattled in the night breeze, fragments catching the moonlight like shards of ice. To the officers, it was chaos. To Evelyn, it was trespass. Cole's voice broke the heavy silence. "What are you hiding?" His flashlight lingered too long on her face, searching for cracks in her composure. Hale shifted uneasily, the tension coiling tighter with every passing second. The room felt heavy, as though the walls themselves waited for something to break. But Evelyn did not tremble, did not plead, did not explain. She only stared back, arms raised, a quiet defiance etched into every line of her posture. And then, without warning, their beams caught on something hanging by the door. A black jacket, its bold yellow letters burned in the glare of their flashlights. FBI. In an instant, the storm faltered. The noise, the commands, the bravado, it all collapsed into silence so sharp it rang in the air. For the first time that night, it wasn't Evelyn who looked exposed. Before we dive deeper into what happened next, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. And if you enjoy gripping stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. The room froze in silence. The bold yellow letters, FBI, glared back at the two officers from the jacket on the wall. It was more than fabric. It was a statement, a threat, a shield. Sergeant Hale's hand twitched near his holster, but his confidence cracked. His voice, once steady, wavered. "Raniere," he muttered under his breath, as though saying the detective's name would steady the ground beneath them. Detective Cole Raniere, however, refused to retreat. His jaw clenched. His flashlight stayed fixed on Evelyn, but his eyes betrayed the tremor of doubt. "That jacket doesn't prove anything," he snapped, his tone forced. "People wear what they don't earn." Evelyn lowered her hands slowly, deliberately, as though reclaiming control of the air itself. "And people break into homes they have no right to enter," she said. Her voice carried no fear, only ice. "Which category do you fall into, detective?" Her words cut deeper than any weapon. Hale shifted his weight uneasily, scanning the room as though an answer might be hiding in the overturned furniture. The once dominant intruders now looked like trespassers caught in their own trap. Still, Cole pressed forward, taking another step toward the bed. His boots crunched on broken glass, the sound too loud, too sharp. We had cause, he insisted, though the conviction faltered on his tongue. You're hiding something. Evelyn's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something colder, a warning. You came crashing through my door at 2 a.m, she said, eyes locked on him. If I was hiding something, you wouldn't be standing right now. The air thickened. The beam of Hale's flashlight slid across the floor, catching on papers scattered near the bed. Files, documents, stacks of neatly typed reports that looked nothing like the clutter of a civilian life. He bent slightly, squinting, but before he could read a word, Evelyn spoke again. Touch those, she warned softly, and you'll answer to more than me. Her tone left no room for question. It wasn't a threat. It was a guarantee. Hale straightened immediately, throat dry. He glanced again at the jacket on the wall, then back at Evelyn. His mind connected the fragments, the files, the calm defiance, the way she commanded the room with nothing but her voice. This wasn't an ordinary resident. This wasn't an accident. Cole, however, refused to yield. His pride burned hotter than his reason. I don't care what patch you wear, he barked. You don't get to... Careful. Evelyn's voice sliced through his words, steady and measured. Because right now, every word you say digs the hole you're standing in. The cracked glass door rattled again as the night breeze pushed through, whispering like an unseen witness. The sound filled the silence that followed, a reminder of the line that had been crossed and the consequences closing in. For the first time since the raid began, the two officers no longer looked in control. They looked like men standing in the wrong place, at the wrong time, facing the wrong woman. Evelyn lowered her arms completely now, no longer a suspect under command, but a commander of the moment. Her voice dropped, quiet but razor-sharp. You came here thinking you'd find weakness. Instead, you found me. Neither officer spoke. Neither dared. The only sound was the faint hum of the city beyond the broken door and the unspoken realization that the night had just turned against them. The apartment felt different now. The door hung loose on shattered hinges. Glass sparkled like frost across the floor. But the real fracture was in the two men standing at the foot of Evelyn Cross's bed. They weren't in control anymore. Sergeant Marcus Hale's beam lingered on the jacket. Black fabric. Bold sun-yellow letters, FBI. The emblem burned in his mind, every second twisting deeper into his chest. He'd stormed into apartments before, loud, brash, certain of his authority. But never one like this. Renair. Hale muttered again, his voice low, urgent. That's real. Detective Cole Renair's jaw worked furiously, muscles twitching in defiance. It doesn't matter, he spat, though the edge in his tone had dulled. His flashlight wavered, betraying him. People hang badges they don't deserve. Doesn't make them anything. Evelyn moved slowly, deliberately, her every step claiming ground they thought was theirs. She stopped near the wall, close enough that the jacket's shadow framed her shoulders like armor. With one hand, she smoothed the fabric, an intimate, almost reverent touch. This isn't decoration, she said evenly. It's earned, and right now it's the only thing keeping your careers from ending tonight. Her words landed like stones in water, ripples that shook both men to their core. Hale swallowed hard. His hand hovered near his holster but never touched it. He didn't dare. Something in Evelyn's tone told him this woman wasn't bluffing. She wasn't scrambling for excuses. She was standing in the center of truth, and they were trespassers in it. Cole, however, refused to bow. His pride was louder than the warning bells clanging in his head. You think waving letters around makes you untouchable? He sneered. But his voice cracked midway, betraying him. We had intel. We were following orders. Evelyn's eyes locked on him, cold and unyielding. Then your orders were rotten. And the moment you kicked in my door, you crossed a line you can't uncross. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the wind, sneaking through the cracked glass, seemed to hesitate. Then Evelyn leaned in just enough, her voice dropping to a blade-sharp whisper. Do you know what happens to officers who raid the home of a federal agent at 2 a.m? Neither man answered. They didn't have to. The answer was written across their pale faces, in the beads of sweat forming at their temples. Evelyn stepped back, reclaiming her ground fully now. Her posture shifted, not a victim cornered in her own home, but a predator letting intruders realize they'd wandered into the wrong den. "You came here looking for control?" she continued, her tone like iron. "But all you found is accountability. And I promise you, accountability will break you faster than I ever could." Cole's flashlight finally lowered, his hand trembling slightly, though his mouth pressed into a hard line. Hale's gaze darted between the jacket, Evelyn, and the broken door, as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. For the first time, the weight of their mistake crashed down on them. They hadn't stormed into a suspect's home. They had stormed into a storm itself, and the woman at its center was stronger than either of them had imagined. The apartment no longer looked like a crime scene. It looked like a reckoning waiting to unfold, and the jacket on the wall? It wasn't just fabric. It was the sentence already written against them. The silence after Evelyn's words stretched long enough to feel like a noose. Detective Cole Renair's jaw clenched tighter with every second, but his defiance looked hollow now. Sergeant Marcus Hale, by contrast, was breathing shallowly, every exhale betraying the knot of panic twisting in his gut. Evelyn finally broke the quiet, her voice level, her gaze steady. "You want to know who I am?" she said, tilting her head slightly. "You've been shouting orders like this is your scene, but you never stop to ask whose ground you're standing on." She walked to the dresser, stepping over scattered papers and glass without flinching. Her fingers brushed over a small leather case resting half-hidden beneath a file. She flipped it open, and the golden badge inside caught the light of their flashlights. The gleam was unmistakable, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Hale exhaled sharply, like the floor had just disappeared beneath him. Cole's expression faltered, eyes narrowing, though the bravado in his stance cracked with visible fissures. "You raided the home of a federal agent," Evelyn continued. Her tone was quiet, but each word landed like a gavel. "No warrant, no notice, no justification. Do you understand what that means?" Hale stammered, his voice dry. We had intel, a tip about narcotics." You thought wrong," Evelyn cut in. Her hand snapped the badge case shut, the sound echoing like a verdict. "And what's worse, you didn't think at all. You came here with prejudice, with arrogance, with a belief that busting down my door at 2 in the morning would make you gods in this room. But the only thing you've made yourselves," she said, her eyes narrowing, "is evidence." Cole's face hardened. "This doesn't change anything. Mistakes happen in the field. Mistakes don't look like this." Evelyn's hand gestured around the wreckage, the splintered door, the overturned furniture, the scattered files. "This is not a mistake. This is a violation, and men like you are the very reason I do what I do." For the first time, Hale found his voice again. What do you mean?" Evelyn stepped closer, her shadow overlapping theirs, her words cold and deliberate. "You think I'm just another analyst tucked behind a desk?" She leaned in, her voice razor-sharp. "I am part of a task force investigating corruption inside law enforcement. The kind that thrives on intimidation, prejudice, and unchecked power. The kind that kicks down doors without cause and silences the voices that should hold them accountable." Cole flinched, though he masked it with a scoff. "That's a nice story." "It's not a story," Evelyn replied. She opened one of the scattered files on the floor and slid it toward them with the toe of her foot. Pages flipped, revealing names, dates, and case numbers. An intricate web of investigations. Both men's eyes froze when they saw familiar names. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "Recognize any of those?" The weight of recognition pressed visibly on Hale's face. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Cole's flashlight dropped slightly, the beam grazing the floor instead of her eyes. "This is bigger than my door," Evelyn continued, her voice steady, relentless. "Bigger than my apartment. Bigger than this night. You didn't just break into the wrong home, you broke into the middle of the very investigation that will end your careers." Neither man spoke. Neither could. Evelyn picked up the jacket from the wall and draped it across her shoulders, her movements calm, deliberate. With the emblem glowing in their flashlights, she looked every inch the authority they had tried to trample. "You came here as hunters," she said, her tone sharp as steel. "But tonight you've become the hunted." The air inside the apartment was heavy, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Evelyn Cross stood tall now, the FBI jacket draped over her shoulders, her badge gleaming like a shard of fire in the flashlight beams. Across from her, the two intruders looked less like officers and more like boys caught red-handed. Her phone buzzed once on the dresser. Evelyn didn't look away from them as she answered, her voice calm and deliberate. "This is Agent Cross. I need a team at my residence immediately. 2 unauthorized officers on site. Forced entry. Possible obstruction of an ongoing investigation." Every word was a nail in their coffin. Cole Renier took a step forward, his desperation finally cracking through the mask of bravado. "Wait, this doesn't have to go that far. We can talk this out." Evelyn's eyes snapped to him, unflinching. "The time for talking was before you shattered my door." Marcus Hale shifted nervously, sweat streaking down his temple. "Look, we didn't know. If we had known who you were, that's the problem," Evelyn cut in, her tone sharp. "You didn't care who I was. You thought I was powerless, disposable, a woman you could intimidate in the middle of the night. And now you're realizing the truth. You chose the wrong door, the wrong target, and the wrong life to trample." The room filled again with silence. Not the silence of hesitation, but the silence of inevitability. Moments later, red and blue lights splashed across the broken glass of the front door. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer, until the apartment itself seemed to vibrate with their arrival. Within minutes, federal agents in dark windbreakers flooded the hallway. Their footsteps were precise, their presence overwhelming. 2 agents entered the bedroom. They didn't need explanations. One look at Evelyn, at the jacket, at the scene, told them everything. "Detective Cole Renier, Sergeant Marcus Hale," one of them announced coldly. "You're under investigation." "Hands where we can see them!" The irony was sharp enough to taste. Cole's hands, the same ones that had been raised in aggression minutes earlier, now lifted in surrender. Hale followed suit, his face pale, eyes fixed anywhere but Evelyn's. The agents disarmed them, cuffed them, and read them their rights in the same mechanical tone they themselves had used countless times before. Evelyn stood still, arms folded, her expression unreadable. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply watched as justice walked them out, their boots crunching over the very glass they had shattered on the way in. When the apartment finally emptied, Evelyn exhaled slowly. The night air carried through the cracked door, cool and clean against her skin. She picked up a splinter of wood from the floor, turning it between her fingers before letting it fall again. Her gaze shifted to the jacket on her shoulders. The fabric was heavy, but it carried more than weight. It carried the truth. Power wielded responsibly is a shield. Power abused is a curse. Evelyn whispered into the quiet, her voice more promise than thought. Justice always finds its way home. The camera would have lingered there, the cracked door, the scattered files, and Evelyn framed against the storm she had just turned back, before fading to black. And that's where this story ends. But justice never really sleeps. Now we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. We love seeing this community come together from every corner of the world. And if stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. More gripping stories are coming and you won't want to miss them.